Yes.
Yeah. So, with whatever we read, it's always the central being, be it the psychic being or the psychic entity, but all of this is being orchestrated with the central being above. He is the one who's seeing everything without participating in the game. And the game begins with our life, with the birth, and it ends with our death.
He is participating to the extent, I'm sorry, that he is controlling, you know,
Correct.
either he's controlling through the Manomaya or Pranamaya or Annamaya or through the Chaitya Purusha, when
Right.
he's controlling. As Sri Aurobindo said, when he is not able to exercise his control, then there is a great disorder. So his
Correct.
involvement is of the control part. But
Correct.
basically, like a presiding control, it is there.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, the scripture is again and again repeating and telling us it's the central being.
Yeah.
So the central being begins before the birth happens, the central being was there. And then I take existence as Yogesh, I take
Yes.
birth.
Yes.
Until I end and I exit out, also the central being is there.
Central being is that which is unborn.
Correct.
Okay. Unborn, eternal, forever. We have been
Right.
referring to 2.20 of the Gita for the central being. Ajo Nityah Shashvatoyam Purano. So it is unborn. Yeah, it is forever and ever. It was always there,
Correct.
will always be there.
And it is the truest core of us. The
Yes.
realization
Yes.
is in the journey to come to realize that you are the central being,
Yes.
that you were there before the birth, and after you complete your cycle of birth and die, the body dies, but the central being is always there.
Correct.
And it's
Correct.
telling us again and so beautifully over the last so many lectures that we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Now, even if we don't realize it, if we just believe it and we take it that you always try to think of the central being playing the game, that the whole engagement is the central being, right?
Yeah.
So the piece is, even if we don't 100% realize it, but the effort of even bringing this into our attention, into our memory, into our, so
It
that
will,
it
that
becomes that
effort now, that
reality.
effort will bring you into touch with that eternity and immortality. And that is what will give you what is called the Shashwati Shanti, the eternal peace.
I
Right.
can I say something here?
Yes, please, Anjali ji.
I feel that in our yoga, in our sadhana, it is much easier to first try to connect with the psychic being, the psychic entity here, the psychic being here. To try to connect straight with the central being would be like going into some hazy space, which is tough. But once you're connected to the psychic being, it is already connected to the central being. And this is so close to you. So it's easier and better to start trying to connect to the psychic entity, psychic being first. Yogesh, that's my suggestion.
Correct. I think my only point was that if you flip it, that every experience that we are going second by second is the central being, then automatically the central being is always there. See,
Right.
one is that I am the psychic being and I have to continue. I have to, it's me and I have to do so much. But if you flip it, that actually is the central being, then
Yeah.
the central being is there every second. This
Yes.
is what the scripture is telling us, that the central being is there. Even if you realize it, you don't realize it, you think of it, you give, every part of whatever you're doing is actually being done by the central being. So I'm
Exactly.
saying if you flip it, then the central being is playing the game rather than there is no Yogesh from the
You're
word
already
go.
coming to the truest knowledge of yourself. If you are knowing, if you are getting identified with the central being, you are already getting the truest knowledge of yourself as to what is your, truest truth, your highest truth. And that is absolute. इसमें कोई वो नहीं है.
Right.
There's nothing to be.
ठीक है.
Right.
इसमें एक चीज और ऐड करी जा सकती है. Shwabando also says, for some people, it is natural to open in the heart region to the psychic being. For some people, the concentration above the head or in the head happens more
Yeah,
naturally.
yeah.
Very important. Whatever happens to you naturally, let it happen, let it flow. इसमें बहुत ज्यादा फिक्सेट नहीं करना चाहिए कि अगर नेचुरली ध्यान ऊपर जा रहा है, जबरदस्ती उसको खींच के हार्ट में लाना, दिस इज नॉट वाइज.
Yeah,
Whatever opening, by whatever gate you are able to enter the kingdom of the divine, have the entry. Once you have had the entry, you can explore the kingdom. This is what Sri Aurobindo says.
very right.
Whatever
Beautiful.
meditation, concentration, bhakti, puja, karma yoga, by whatever means you are able to connect with the divine,
Yeah.
start with that, let it grow, let it grow, let it grow. Ultimately वो योगा इंटेग्रल बन ही जाएगा. One should not have very fixed and rigid ideas कि नहीं पहले तो साइकिक बीइंग वो कोई जरूरी नहीं है. ठीक है, सारे चक्रों को खुलना है, साइकिक बीइंग का भी फाइंडिंग होना है, सेंट्रल बीइंग का भी फाइंडिंग होना है, बट जो भी हमको नेचुरली आ रहा है वो हमको नेचुरली होने देना चाहिए. हम उसमें बहुत अपनी तरफ से हस्तक्षेप ना करें. एंड दिस हैपेंस बिकॉज ऑफ डेवलपमेंट इन प्रीवियस लाइव्स. वी डू नॉट नो व्हाट स्पिरिचुअल डेवलपमेंट वी हैव अंडरगॉन इन प्रीवियस लाइव्स.
Already
राइट,
in previous life.
तो ये है. ठीक है.
Right. Should we start now?
Yes,
Because
yes, we have already we have started the recording
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
We'll start with this thing. I'll just see who all have joined. Yogesh ji, Anjali ji, Dhaval bhai. एक रह गए हैं, एक दो लोग. They'll join when they listen.
Yeah.
So the screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay, so we just have to read the remaining letters today. The central being the surrender of the central being. Anybody can read these two. Anjali ji, would you like to read?
Yeah, sure.
Please do.
The surrender of the central being. The central being is that on which all the others depend. If it makes its surrender, that is, renounces its separate fulfillment in order to be an instrument of the divine, then it is easier for the mental, vital, and physical to surrender. The central being surrender to the divine, has nothing to do with suitable circumstances. If the will of the central being turns towards union with the divine, then it renounces its separate fulfillment.
Right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
come in. Huh.
The surrender of the central being.
Huh. 1 minute, Anmol. Huh, you continue.
नहीं बोलिए. अच्छा. The central being is that on which all the others depend. All the others means the Manomaya, Pranamaya, Annamaya Purusha, or the Chaitya Purusha, the psychic being. If it makes its surrender, that is, renounces its separate fulfillment in order to be an instrument of the divine, then it is easier for the mental, vital, and physical to surrender. If it makes its surrender, that is, renounces its separate fulfillment in order to be an instrument of the divine. What I understand by this is that the fulfillment for the central being would be, to know what it is, to recover that divinity, and that's it. Once you have known that you are that infinity and eternity, etc., that is your fulfillment. After that, you don't need to do anything, But उसका जो दूसरा पक्ष है, on the contrary, if it surrenders and in order to be an instrument of the divine, instead of looking for that merger in that ever present infinity, if it has the will to become an instrument of the divine, basically जिसको कहते हैं, अगर वेरी वेरी वैसे बोला जाए, निवृत्ति और प्रवृत्ति मार्ग. सो निवृत्ति इज यू गो टुवर्ड्स कि खत्म करो इसको, निवृत्त हो गए, छूट गए इससे, फुलफिलमेंट हो गया, काम हो गया, खत्म. ठीक है, आई हैव completed my evolution and gone back, like that. Pravritti is action, forward going, engagement with the play. These are two pair of words which are used in traditional Adhyatma. So in order to be an instrument of the divine, then what happens? Like there is a divine will working in the universe. And the divine will is not this, that simply you leave the universe and you merge back into the divine. You have to play an active role in the universe. Everybody has a destiny. जो in that final sense of evolution, what is my role as an instrument of the divine in the progressive movement of the universe, like that. This is what I understand from this. Then it is easier for the mental, vital, and physical to surrender. इसका एक और probably meaning ये निकाला जा सकता है कि as long as the evolution of the psychic being has not happened to that extent that वो surrender वाली चीज, it cannot come at a rudimentary stage of evolution. It can only happen when the psychic being has had enough experience, it has gained enough maturity. Okay. Till such time, the ego will be the controlling mechanism and the being will work for his own fulfillment. अपने सेल्फ एनलार्जमेंट के लिए वर्क करेगा. ठीक है. These two things are different. To work for your own self enlargement, I may have better and better life circumstances. I may have greater and greater power. I may have greater and greater enjoyment. This need not be in opposition to the divine. But still, the idea of surrender to the divine is not there. The idea of being an instrument of the divine is not there. This is what he's saying. So, if the evolution has reached that point where we want to surrender, we want to become an instrument of the divine. Once this central change has happened in ourselves, then it is easier for even the mental, vital, and physical to surrender. That's what he's saying. Now, what will be meant by the surrender of the mental being, vital being, and physical being? Basically, offering themselves that the light of the divine, all the qualities of the divine, ananda, light, power, all that can pour into them and divinize them also. But for that, sorry, the surrender of these parts is necessary. There is a line in Savitri which sums it up very beautifully. It says, each part in us desires its absolute. ये याद कर लेने चाहिए ये लाइन, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है. ये लाइन should be remembered by everybody. Repeat again. Each part in us desires its absolute. अगर हम अपने आप को just देखें, we have four main parts. Psychic. What is the absolute of psychic? Ananda. Perfect Ananda. Okay. Mind. What is the absolute of mind? Omniscience. Knowledge. Perfect knowledge. Vital. What is this thing of vital absolute? Power. Omnipotence. Practical omnipotence. And physical immortality. To be able to continue the form as long as we like and to be able to change the form at will. Of course, that's at a very high stage. But ye line, each part in us desires its absolute. When this happens, then and only then does the purpose of the ever eternal, ever perfect Jivatma dawning this imperfect nature get fulfilled, not otherwise. Okay. So
Whenever it's done, can you send on the group the
each part in us
no
desires its absolute.
the corresponding parts that you've said.
That I will send this thing from the Life Divine. Page number 278 pe hai, there is the table. So what is the equivalent in the higher hemisphere for these four parts? मैं भेज दूंगा, but psychic Ananda, mind is knowledge or supermind, vital ka is chit shakti or perfect conscious force, and for the physical it is Sat, which means existence, which means basically forever, you being immortal. Immortality. Okay. So any question, anything to discuss in this so far?
Should I read further?
No, अभी उसका second part रह गया है. We only covered the first letter that you read, second letter.
अनमोल, physical में beauty नहीं आती थी?
Yes, that is another classification. That is another classification given by mother. आप जो classification बोल रही हैं वो ये है. Mother said in the
Satyam Shivam Sundaram
yeah, in this universe, yeah. In the physical, the divine manifests as beauty. In the vital, as power. In the psychic, as love. And in the mind, as knowledge. You can approach it in this way also. वो जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ वो, I mean, if you think about it, if that immortality is not there, ठीक है, then everything else loses its purpose. See, if you are doing something, but there is going to come a time when all of that will be destroyed, then what is the point of doing it? You become totally disillusioned with it. So, वो उस sense में है, ठीक है? These are not contradictory things. They are, you can reconcile them. Yeah.
They are aligned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The central being surrender to the divine has nothing to do with suitable circumstances. Yes. ये कई बार ना हमारे मन में कि अभी मेरे लाइफ सर्कमस्टांसेस सूटेबल नहीं है, आप चाहे कितना भी बात कर लो सरेंडर का वगैरह वगैरह, अभी वो नहीं, अभी मैं नहीं कर सकता, माई लाइफ circumstances do not allow me. So this is clarifying that point. It has nothing to do with suitable circumstances, by which is meant the outward circumstances. ठीक है? If the will of the central being turns towards union with the divine, then it renounces its separate fulfillment. Why? कि till then basically you are working for the self enlargement of yourself. So then you renounce that separate fulfillment. Basically, I mean, the crux of this is कि there is that awakening in the individual consciousness, in the individual being, that there is such a thing as the divine, which is the Lord and Master and source and everything basically. And the real purpose of existence is to become the conscious instrument of that divine. And like ज्ञान योगा जो होता है, so if one follows the ज्ञान yoga on the lines of जैसे अद्वैत वेदांत है शंकराचार्य जी का, so in that ईश्वरा is not the highest, in that sort of white infinity of Brahman is the highest. तो उसके अंदर ये idea नहीं है, or even if the idea is there, the idea is there as a secondary idea. The primary goal is to merge yourself in that white light, in that white infinity of Brahman, right? But that is not the highest. That is not surrender to the पुरुषोत्तम. उसके अंदर पुरुषोत्तम का कॉन्सेप्ट ही नहीं है उस हिसाब से देखा जाए तो. उसके अंदर ईश्वर is also part of the Maya. You understand? So what he is referring to is when he says the word divine, it means the Purushottama of the Gita, the Sri Bhagavan of the Gita, and basically in the evolution of the individual, when this awakening comes that there is such a thing as the divine. इसीलिए मतलब भगवान 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 हम वर्ड तो यूज करते हैं, बट when one starts really trying to understand कि भगवान होता क्या है, then you come to the study of the Gita. उसमें it is Sri Bhagavan who is saying everything. Purushottama, the word is introduced for the first time, and you try to understand. And how do you understand? How do you understand something which is beyond you? You understand that by growing into the consciousness of that divine being. And how do you do that? उसमें जो योग का प्रोसेस बताया हुआ है, कर्म योगा, ज्ञान योगा, भक्ति योगा, by following the instructions given in the Gita. इसीलिए there is great insistence in the Gita also, in the 16th chapter, last 2 verses, that one must follow the Shastra. It's all right to say that the Supreme Shastra is within your heart, but are you able to listen to that heart and that Supreme Shastra and Supreme Ishvara within your heart all the time? Very few people are able to do it. Those who are able to do it have already had a lot of spiritual evolution through their previous lives. वो उनका जन्मांतरीय संस्कार है, right? So the last 2 verses of the 16th chapter, it मतलब kind of it says that you should follow. I'll read the Sanskrit, it's very beautiful. यह शास्त्र विधि मुत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः न स सिद्धिम अवाप्नोति न सुखम न पराम गतिम. He who does not follow the vidhi of the Shastra and engages in action, he does not reach perfection, he does not get happiness, he does not attain the supreme status. Okay? And then, tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vyavasthitau jnatva shastra vidhan oktam karma kartum iha arhasi. Therefore, following the pramana of the Shastra, taking the Shastra as the pramana. So there is a phrase in the Indian spiritual tradition, apta vakya pramana. ठीक है? Apta means he who has attained. Apta का मतलब होता है जो attain कर चुका है. So the rishis are called apta. ठीक है? Vakya, the saying of them. Pramana, that is the proof. Okay? In the case of the Gita, the word of the Gita is the pramana. Shastra pramana. Tasmat shastram pramanam te. कार्य अकार्य, तो कार्याकार्य बन गया. क्या करना है क्या नहीं करना है, as to this, as to the resolution of this, follow the pramana of the Shastra. Jnatva Shastra Vidhanoktam. Knowing the Vidhana of the Shastra, what the Shastra is telling to do, having known that karma kartum iharasi. engage in action, do work. Again, Gita bar bar, karma kartum, from the beginning till the end. Iha, here, karma kartum iha arhasi. Arhasi matlab one should. Basically, the insistence on the Shastra. To come back, कि how to know that Purushottama, how to know that divine, how to basically, yes, to know him, to become sensitive to him, to grow in his awareness. It is not by following, your own whims and fancies, but अपना अनुशासन, अपना शासन शास्त्र के द्वारा करवाना, and you know इतनी बुद्धि आनी चाहिए in the first place कि I am not able to listen to, if it is happening to somebody, then obviously he is at a higher stage. Shri Aurobindo was like that. So his guru जिन्होंने उनको निर्वाण का अनुभव कराया था लेले, so he asked him कि Shri Aurobindo told him that I am able to hear this inner voice. So he said, can you hear him at any time? He said, yes, I can hear him at any time. So Lele said, there matlab, now henceforward I, because as a guru, it was his responsibility to guide him. Na? So he said, you don't need my guidance. Henceforward, I offer you to that divine presence within you and you follow that guidance. But to do it without getting misled is possible for a higher category of souls, by which is meant we will all reach that point somewhere in our evolution. Those who have already attained a very high degree of maturity. So, till such time, wisdom and the Shastra itself says, the Gita itself says, follow the guidance of the Shastra. We are lucky to have something like the Gita with us, books of Sri Aurobindo. So, we should follow that. Okay. So much. Yeah. Sorry.
So,
double.
Anmol,
Ah.
if I read this line, if the will of the central being turns towards union with the divine. Now, one is that while reading it, we think it's us individuals, or you just put your attention that actually the central being, because the scripture is telling you there is only the central being. So the central being now is reading that if the will of the central being turns towards union with the divine. So it basically is telling each one of us that actually I am giving an opportunity to turn towards this one reality.
Yes.
It's actually that happening.
Yes.
But we are interpreting it as us being individuals reading this.
Yes.
But if you really look at that,
Yes.
the actual substance of this, it is that. The central being is telling the central being.
It is our own central beings right now through this session, which are telling us that ultimately we should turn towards union with the divine.
Right.
Very well stated, Yogesh.
Very well stated. Then it renounces its separate fulfillment. And ये easy नहीं है. The ego always wants its own separate fulfillment. मेरे लिए इसमें क्या है? Self aggrandizement जिसको बोलते हैं. खुद की पावर बढ़ना, खुद का यश बढ़ना, खुद का वेल्थ बढ़ना, लेट्स से व्हाटएवर वे, ठीक है. बट दैट इज नॉट ठीक है, उसमें सेल्फ एनलार्जमेंट हो रहा है. फ्रॉम समथिंग स्मॉलर एंड पेटी एंड प्यूनी यू आर बिकमिंग बिगर, एंड इट्स नॉट रॉन्ग. आपका अगर एक सात्विक तरीके से, एक धार्मिक तरीके से सेल्फ एनलार्जमेंट हो रहा है, Sri Aurobindo says this clearly in the Isha Upanishad. It is not wrong. But still that turning point has to come when you realize, no, all this should be at the service of the divine. अब वो इनडायरेक्टली तो होता ही है. सी नो मैटर हाउ मच बिग यू बिकम, नेचर गेट्स इट्स. आप अगर बहुत धनवान होंगे तो टैक्स आपको देना ही पड़ेगा, सरकार तो ले ही लेगी, इजंट इट? If you are powerful, you can't do everything on your own, so you will employ people like that. So the universe does take it back from you no matter what you do, right? You cannot have वो separate करके, वो तो हो ही नहीं सकता. But then it becomes conscious that it is the divine who is there in everybody, and I must live to serve that divinity within myself and everybody. That is the difference. And at a further this thing, union with the divine, I must unite my consciousness with that which is the source of everything. ये awakening आना basically. Okay?
Anmol bhai,
Yes.
I have a question. We hit this renounces its separate fulfillment in the earlier letter as well as here, this particular line. Now you mentioned at that time that to recover the divinity instead of merger into infinity, right?
That yes.
Right. So my question is, when central being itself is an extension of that self, right? Why does it need to recover the divinity? It is divine, no?
It needs to recover the divinity because in right now that central being is in the evolution. Abhi aapke liye you don't even know your central being. As Sri Aurobindo says, most people are aware only of their ego. They are not aware of their central being. Abhi kya hai? We have gotten to know a word. We have got a term called central being. But are you aware of your central being?
No, it's not that question I'm asking whether I am aware or not.
Huh.
I'm asking the central being itself knows, no, that it is
Central
a.
being knows now.
Huh,
But
so
who is
the
the
question.
central being? The central being is me and you. And right now, me and you do not know ourselves as the central being.
No,
Right now, me and you knows ourselves as some kind of mental ego, enlightened a little bit by the psychic being and that sort of thing. We do not know ourselves as the central being right now, do we?
no, that park that question. That is not my question really. My question is when in the from the self, the central being is an extension of the self into the multiplicity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it is already divine. No, in earlier letters we
Yeah,
read.
it is already divine, but it has to recover that divinity. When it assumes the poise of a central being, then it
हाँ
is separate from the divine. ना उसने एक individual self का poise ले लिया है ना.
हाँ बराबर है
The
तो
word central being, its central being means that जीवात्मन. तो वो divine से पृथक हो गया. It is presiding over a manifestation right now. So it
अच्छा
is separate. It has to recover its union with that self. नहीं?
Yeah, so that is why it needs to recover the
Exactly.
divinity
Exactly.
and merger into infinity.
Yeah, it can choose to
wi-
merge.
wi-
Yes.
will mean that that extension will dissolve back
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
the self, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, when we say dissolve, ठीक है?
हाँ
This is a very important point. अभी तक जो आपने बोला. Dissolve का मतलब घुल गया तो मतलब उसका अस्तित्व समाप्त हो गया, है ना?
हाँ
वो हो
because
नहीं
it merges
सकता ऐसे.
back, no?
Yeah, it dissolves. वही. That's what I'm trying to say.
हाँ
ये वो जो 15.7 में लिखा है ना कि the jiva is sanatana. So the
हाँ
individuality is also eternal. Even if you dissolve, I am saying, even if you merge in that self and know yourself as the self, you can at any time come back and become and again preside over a manifestation. Because the
oh
individual is also eternal. The individuality is also eternal.
Yeah,
अच्छा
the
अच्छा अच्छा
individual, the central being does not merge into the
It can have the experience of merger. ठीक है?
can have the experience, but it will always remain
Yes.
individual.
Exactly. But it can remain in that state of merger as long as it wants. तो वो थोड़े टाइम के लिए अपने आप को उसमें डिसॉल्व या मर्ज फील करेगा वेर इट्स इंडिविजुअल दिस थिंग इज लॉस्ट ठीक है बट द मोमेंट इट वांट्स टू कम बैक इनटू द प्ले इट कैन कम बैक इनटू द प्ले
Because it never, because that individuality never really merged because
exactly so the so called dissolution is not permanent
yeah,
it is at will जब
yeah.
चाहा यही ना दिस इज नॉट टू बी कैनॉट बी अंडरस्टूड बाय द माइंड डिसॉल्व मतलब वो तो मिल गया घुल गया खत्म हो गया
हाँ
जो है पानी में डाला नमक उसमें डिसॉल्व हो गया तो फिर नमक सेपरेट कैसे होगा बट इट्स नॉट लाइक दैट द जीवा इज ऑल्सो इटर्नल वो जो 15.7 है गीता का इट इज मतलब टू माई अंडरस्टैंडिंग इट इज टू बी मतलब मेमोराइज्ड एंड उसका जो अर्थ है इफ नॉट मेमोराइज मेमोराइजेशन इज नॉट मतलब नॉट एवरीबडी वांट्स टू डू इट so but उसका जो essence है page 445 of the essays on the Gita the individual is also eternal please note down the page number those whoever is attending these classes 15.7 in the Bhagavad Gita and page number 445 in the essays on the Gita
Mameva ansha
yes
jiva
जीवलोके
Tmai
जीवभूत
vansho
सनातन
jivaloke jivabhutah sanatana it is verily an eternal portion of me that becomes a jiva in the world of jivas
page 4
जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनःषष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति but we are focusing on the first part of the verse first half of the verse
which page can you repeat page
page
4
number 445
445 yeah
okay
yeah thanks now it's clear to me
yeah these things now no matter how much the impatient parts in us feel कि speed slow है but it has to be as deliberate as thorough as possible right so who would like to read the next two letters anybody who has not been able to participate so far Archana ji Archana ji
Yeah, so yeah, I'll read.
yes ma'am the central being after liberation these
Yeah.
two letters
The central being liberation.
the voice is not coming
the central being after
Yes,
liberation.
now it's fine.
What will remain after liberation is the central being, not the ego. The central being will live in the consciousness of the divine everywhere and in all other beings also. So it will not have the consciousness of a separate ego, but of one center among many of the divine multiplicity.
Next one
On
also.
the higher spiritual planes, there is no ego because the oneness of the divine is felt. But there may be the sense of the one's true person or individual being, not ego, but a portion of the divine.
Correct. Thank you. So he's describing the condition of the central being after mukti. After liberation. What will remain after liberation is the central being, not the ego. So no matter what yoga we do, uh, the fulfillment of yoga is the removal of ego. What is ego? The sense of separateness. Okay. Avidya. In the Isha Upanishad, what does Sri Aurobindo say? What is Vidya? Vidya is the consciousness of oneness, unity. And what is avidya? The lack of the consciousness of unity. When you forget that everything is one, that is ignorance. That is the definition of avidya or ignorance. Okay. What will remain after liberation is the central being, not the ego. The central being was forever, is forever, will be forever, like that. The central being will live in the consciousness of the divine everywhere. Right now, are we having that consciousness? No. It comes sometimes in glimpses, maybe, but then that will become permanent. The central being will live in the consciousness of the divine everywhere and in all other beings also. So, first part of the sentence, it is the divine who is everywhere. He is omnipresent. ठीक है जैसे जो वर्ड विष्णु है द वर्ड विष्णु लिटरली इट मीन्स द ऑल परवेडिंग विश धातु जो है उसमें विश का मतलब होता है एंटर करना सो ही हु हैज एंटर्ड एवरीवेयर दैट्स व्हाट द वर्ड विष्णु मीन्स ठीक है सो द डिवाइन एवरीवेयर कि एवरीवेयर इट इज द डिवाइन ऑल परवेजिव और ऑमनी प्रेजेंट ठीक है सेकेंड पार्ट and in all other beings also. Not only he is present everywhere, he is present in each and every being. Okay, this gives me an opportunity to share one of the very, very simple but very, very profound and gives a meaning to life exchange with mother. She was asked, "Why are we on earth?" Simple question. Why are we on earth? Mother's reply, to find the divine who is in each of us and in all things. Okay. Why are we on earth? To find the divine who is in each of us and in all things. This is the purpose of life. So it's very easy to memorize also, and it gives a purpose. Otherwise, an aimless life is a miserable life, as mother said, right? So it will not have the consciousness of a separate ego, but of one center among many of the divine multiplicity. ये भी डिवाइन का एक सेंटर है मैं भी हूं ये भी है वो भी है आई एम वन सेंटर ऑफ द अमंग मेनी ऑफ द डिवाइन मल्टीप्लिसिटी the consciousness of the separate ego disappears. Another thing, जैसे योगा में ना योगा कर रहे हैं, how to know that I am progressing. So very difficult aim because ultimately it can be achieved only by the divine grace. But जिसको हिंदी में कहते हैं निर्मूलन, uprooting of all egoistic consciousness from within myself. All that gives me the sense of separateness at any level in my being, uska nirmulan means uprooting, to chase out, to drive out egoism from every nook and corner of my being. That is another way in which you can give a spiritual goal to ourselves. एक तो मैंने पहले वो मदर का दिया, why are we on earth? To find the divine who is in each of us and in all things. I mean, naturally, this will happen only when we have, to a great extent, uprooted the ego from within ourselves. Right? Because many times it can happen that, okay, I am trying to practice yoga, I am trying to give a spiritual orientation to my life and all, but वो goal की clarity नहीं होती. भक्ति योगा में the goal is very simple, ईश्वर साक्षात्कार. I want to see Krishna face to face. Sri Aurobindo writes in one of his letters to his wife, 1905 or 6 का letter है. He says, 3 madnesses have taken hold of me. One madness is this: if the divine exists, I want to see him face to face. It is a very, very valid aim. इसमें, I mean, there is hardly anybody who can say that I should not have the same, right? Okay. May I read the next one? का उसमें? Should I go into that? On the higher spiritual planes, there is no ego because the oneness of the divine is felt, but there may be the sense of one's true person or individual being. One's true person or one's individual being, not ego, but a portion of the divine. This is clear enough, I suppose. Somebody can read the next 3 letters. Who would like to read? Himanshu ji?
I'll read.
Yes, please.
The Karana Purusha.
Karana.
The Karana Purusha
कारण नहीं है
is
भैया, कारण है. वो इंग्लिश में
sorry.
एक के ऊपर डंडा नहीं है, वो हो जाता है कारण.
Okay. The Karana Purusha. The Karana Purusha is what is called the central being by us, the Jiva. It stands above the play, supporting it always. The Jivatman and the Chaitya Purusha. Jivatma is not psychic being. We have fixed on Chaitya Purusha as the equivalent in Sanskrit of the psychic being. Jivatma is the individual self, the central being. Chaitya Purusha means rather the Purusha in the Chit, the fundamental inner consciousness. Jiva is the fundamental, or as we call it, the central being. But the fundamental being is combined of the mental, vital, psychic, etc. These are only expressions of the Jivatman. The Jivatman itself is self-existent in the divine, essential in its being. It cannot be regarded as a combination of things.
Right. Thank you. So, Karana means instrument. Karana means cause. ठीक है? Same धातु होती है क्री धातु. It's just with a little play of the language. वो करण माने इंस्ट्रूमेंट जिसके थ्रू होता है, और कारण जिसकी वजह से होता है. ठीक है, वेरी सिंपल. सो द कारण पुरुषा. किसी ने
that is what is Anmol by causal body पुराने उसमें बोलते हुए
कारण, सेम कॉजल बॉडी. बट यहाँ पे वो बॉडी वर्ड यूज नहीं कर रहे हैं. हियर ही इज यूजिंग द वर्ड पुरुष, द कारण पुरुष. मतलब कारण पुरुषा माने जिसकी वजह से सब कुछ हो रहा है. ही हु इज द कॉज ऑफ एवरीथिंग.
correct, yeah.
So the Karana Purusha is what is called the central being by us. As Yogesh Bhai said ना, कि सब कुछ जो हो रहा है वो बेसिकली जीवात्मन की वजह से हो रहा है, सेंट्रल बीइंग की वजह से. वो कारण पुरुष है. The whole play and everything, it is happening because of that central being, our true being. So the Karana Purusha is what is called the central being by us, the Jiva. It stands above the play, supporting it always. So it is supporting. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो कुछ नहीं कर रहा है, वो सपोर्ट कर रहा है, वो कंट्रोल भी कर रहा है. दैट इज इट्स रूल. ठीक है, लाइक दैट. बट वो एक्टिवली सपोर्ट करता है और वो चेंज होता है वगैरह वगैरह. दैट इज एज वी हैव सीन अर्लियर थ्रू द साइकिक बीइंग. Right? Next, the Jivatman and the Chaitya Purusha. Jivatma is not psychic being. We have fixed on Chaitya Purusha as the equivalent in Sanskrit of the psychic being. Now, मैंने जितना भी ढूंढने की कोशिश करी है, I have not been able to find the word Chaitya Purusha in whatever Upanishad literature that I have read. So, it may be a coinage by Sri Aurobindo. I am not sure about this. Even I asked Sampadanand Mishra ji, who is a Sanskrit expert. He was also not able to give me a textual reference for the term Chaitya Purusha. So it may be a term coined by Sri Aurobindo, a Sanskrit term coined. Now, whether that is the case or not, that I cannot say for sure. But doesn't matter, वो पहले था या नहीं था, वो clearly बोलना है, we have fixed on Chaitya Purusha as the equivalent in Sanskrit of the psychic being. ठीक है? Jivatma is the individual self, the central being. This is just for the Sanskrit terms fixing. Chaitya Purusha means rather the Purusha in the Chit, the fundamental inner consciousness.
Kirit uncle used to say that Chaitya Purusha is a term from the Upanishads. So it is in the Upanishads somewhere.
I have, okay, if anybody can
Yeah.
find it, I'll be grateful.
If you can't find it, nobody can find it.
ये
Anmol.
जरूरी नहीं है, मतलब I have only gone through like 10 or 11 Upanishads. बाकी में हो सकता है कहीं पे हो. 11 are the major ones. उसमें मुझे तो मिला नहीं. उसमें पुरुषो अंतरात्मा एक जगह आता है कठोपनिषद में, पर माइनर वंस में कहीं होगा. देयर आर 108 टोटल मिला करके, and पता नहीं कितने सारे होते हैं. सो आई मीन उसमें कहीं होगा तो ठीक है, अदरवाइज आई हैव नॉट बीन एबल टू फाइंड. बट ही इज डिस्क्राइबिंग कि हाउ ही हैज कॉइन्ड दिस वर्ड. ठीक है, द पुरुषा इन द चित. चित के अंदर जो पुरुष है, चित ही इज डिस्क्राइब, चित इज डिफाइनिंग एज द फंडामेंटल इनर कॉन्शियसनेस. तो हमारी जो पूरी इनर कॉन्शियसनेस है, उसका जो मेन पुरुषा है, दैट इज द चैत्य पुरुषा.
Is Chaitya Purusha not mentioned? It's not mentioned in the Gita, no?
नो नो नो. गीता में तो नहीं है. दैट आई कैन से 100%. उपनिषद में मे बी, आई मीन आई रेड इट 7-8 years ago, आई फॉरगॉटन, बट एज फार एज आई रिमेंबर जो मेन है, ईशा केना कठ मुंडक मांडुक्य प्रश्न ऐत्रेय तैत्तिरीय, उसमें तो कहीं भी नहीं है. छांदोग्य बृहदारण्यक श्वेताश्वतर, अमंग दीज 11 ones आई डोंट रिमेंबर रीडिंग इट. तो एआई आजकल इज सो स्ट्रांग, अगर वी विल यूज द, वो आ जाएगा उसमें. तब तो एआई नहीं था जब मैंने करा था, तो बट टू माई नॉलेज इट्स नॉट देयर. इट्स देयर, वंडरफुल. आप कह रही हैं किरीट अंकल ने बोला तो होगा, पक्का होगा, बट वो कहाँ है एग्जैक्टली, दैट आई डोंट नो. ठीक है, एनीवे, more important is what the word means, what the term means. The term means is the purusha in the fundamental inner consciousness, our inmost being, basically. That is how he described it earlier. Jiva is the fundamental, or as we call it, the central being. But the fundamental being is not combined. So when it comes in italics like this, so in the original letter, Sri Aurobindo would have underlined it. तो वो अंडरलाइन की जगह यहाँ पे इसको आइटैलिक में डाल दिया है. बट द फंडामेंटल बीइंग इज नॉट अ कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ द मेंटल, वाइटल, साइकिक एटसेट्रा. दीज आर ओनली एक्सप्रेशंस ऑफ द जीवा. तो वो उनका सम टोटल नहीं है. ऑन द कॉन्ट्ररी, दैट इज समथिंग प्री एग्जिस्टेंट, एंड दीज आर एक्सप्रेशंस ऑफ दैट फंडामेंटल बीइंग. Okay, the Jivatman itself is self-existent in the divine, essential in its being. It cannot be regarded as a combination of things because it is essential.
Kirit uncle used to mention that Chaitya Purusha is mentioned in the Katha Upanishad.
Acha,
Clearly he
Try
used
to
to say
find
Katha Upanishad.
Kathopanishad.
Katha Upanishad.
Okay, I'll try to find out. ठीक है. Anything इसमें कुछ डिस्कस करना है? नहीं? Okay. Somebody will read the next 2 letters, next 3 actually. We are coming to the end of this section. आज हो जाना चाहिए. We have around 18 minutes or so. You should be able to do it. 1, 2, 3 letters. Who else has not been able to read so far? Harish, would you like to read?
Yeah, sure.
Please.
From the Jivatman and Mental Purusha.
Correct.
The Jivatman and the Mental Purusha. When the Atman is individualized, that is, supporting from above the play of individual being, it is called the Purusha or sometimes the Jivatman. It is the central being, usually. However, it is the mental Purusha one first becomes aware of, and through that the nature is led. To become aware of the psychic being or the central Purusha is more difficult. The mental being within watches, observes, and passes judgment on all that happens in you. The psychic does not watch and observe in this way like a witness, but it feels and knows spontaneously in a much more direct and luminous way by the very purity of its own nature and the divine instinct within it. And so, whenever it comes to the front, it reveals at once what are the right and what are the wrong movements in your nature. The being of man is composed of these elements, the psychic behind supporting all, the inner mental, vital, and physical, and the outer, quite external nature of mind, life, and body, which is their instrument of expression. But above all is the central being Jivatman, which uses them for all its manifestation. It is a portion of the divine self, but this reality of himself is hidden from the external man, who replaces this inmost self and soul of him by the mental and vital ego. It is only those who have begun to know themselves that become aware of their true central being, but still it is always there standing behind the action of mind, life, and body, and is the most directly represented by the psychic, which is itself a spark of the divine. It is by the growth of the psychic element in one's own nature that one begins to come into conscious touch with one's central being above. When that happens, and the central being uses a conscious will to control and organize the movements of the nature, it is then that one has a real, a spiritual, as opposed to a partial and merely mental or moral self-mastery. I don't think the Jivatma is concentrated anywhere except in this sense that is in the waking state, it is the mental Purusha that leads, and the seat of the mental Purusha is in the head, behind the center, between the eyebrows. In dream state, what remains active in the body is the externalizing consciousness or something of it, and the center of that is in the neck throat. In the Sushupti, if it if it is real Sushupti, not merely unconscious of dreams, but absence of dreams, the consciousness is deep within, in the heart center or behind it, for that is veiled center of the innermost being.
Right. Thank you. The Jivatman and the mental Purusha. When the Atman is individualized, that is, supporting from above the play of the individual being, it is called the Purusha or sometimes the Jivatman. Hmm. Okay. Purusha is the most common equivalent for the English word soul.
Is it the Sankhya Purusha here?
Which Purusha?
It is called the Purusha. सांख्य में जो पुरुष कहते हैं, पुरुष and प्रकृति, ये सांख्य वाला पुरुष है?
कह सकते हैं, आप कह सकते हैं, बिकॉज वर्ड तो वही है. ठीक है.
सांख्य में बहुत पुरुष होते हैं. There are
मल्टीपल पुरुषास होते हैं
that
उसमें.
cannot be the same.
Sankhya actually does not reach the final unity. पर आप जो बोल रहे हैं ना, क्योंकि यहाँ पे जो बात हो रही है, ही इज टॉकिंग ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल बीइंग एंड दैट ही सेइंग इज कॉल्ड द पुरुषा. तो उस एक्सटेंट में, टू दैट एक्सटेंट इट इज राइट, बिकॉज सांख्य में वो मल्टीपल पुरुषास ही होते हैं. ओनली क्लैरिफिकेशन विच आई वांटेड टू गिव हियर वाज कि जितना मैंने पढ़ा है या देखा है, जो इंग्लिश वर्ड सोल है, सिंपली अगर आप बोले आप कौन है, आई एम अ सोल, राइट. तो सोल के लिए सबसे ज्यादा फ्रीक्वेंटली यूज्ड या जो सबसे अप्रोक्सीमेट वर्ड है, आई मीन इट्स द संस्कृत वर्ड विच इज द ओरिजिनल, व्हेन इंग्लिश वर्ड्स हैव कम लेटर, द वर्ड इज पुरुषा. ठीक है. सो टू दैट एक्सटेंट व्हाट ही इज सेइंग हियर इज करेक्ट एंड परफेक्ट. बट समटाइम्स जो डिवाइन है, द डिवाइन को ही पुरुषा बोलते हैं. You understand? Simply the divine is called Purusha. So he is the Purushottama भी नहीं, कभी कभी होता है. I don't want to confuse anybody, but sometimes the divine is called simply the Purusha. He is the Purusha. Okay? He is the Purusha और ये बाकी है सब उसके अलग अलग पॉइज हैं. So उस पुरुष का जो उत्तम पॉइज है, it is called Purushottama. फिर उसका एक अक्षरा पॉइज होता है, एक क्षरा पॉइज होता है, etc. But the word Purusha in other circumstances can, other places, context can mean even the supreme divine. If you want to clarify, then you say sometimes Paraha Purusha, जैसे गीता में आता है देहे अस्मिन पुरुषः परः. But I mean इस context में जो भी हम लेटर पढ़ रहे हैं, let's stick to that. So when the Atman is individualized, that is supporting from above the play of individual being, it is called the Purusha. Okay. Or sometimes the Jiva. Why it is called Jivatma? उन्होंने पहले भी किया था. The word Jiva means living, and it is when something is moving, that having that sense of life, या sense, या appearance of life, then we can say that it is something distinct from something else. And because of the element of distinction coming because of the life principle, that is why the same word is used for life also and for individual also. The word being Jiva. ठीक है. I know it's not perfect, मतलब, but that is what is the Sanskrit rationale behind it. Living being, individual being, ऐसे करके. Something which is non-living, you cannot distinguish now whether it is individual, ये separate नहीं. Distinction comes with the life element that way. That is why the same word is used. To me also, it is not completely and perfectly clear why the same word is used for individual as well as for life, but this is what I have been able to figure out so far. All right. Next sentence. It is the central being. Usually, however, ab dhyan dein. Usually, however, it is the mental Purusha one first becomes aware of, and through that the nature is led. When does this happen? When in our consciousness we start feeling a separation between our thoughts on the one hand and that which is observing the thoughts. Very important. In everybody's growth, in everybody's this thing, there comes a time when you start becoming aware of your thoughts and you start seeing your thoughts as separate from yourself. कि ये thinking हो रही है. You could also say, इसके लिए एक word होता है इंग्लिश में, metacognition, thinking about what you are thinking. ठीक है? But basically what has happened is that the mental Purusha in you, the mental witness in you has started separating itself from the movements of the mind. And when that separation becomes perfect, then you will know your mental Purusha. Is that clear? So usually, however, it is the mental Purusha, and this is actually one of the prescribed meditations. Shri Aurobindo also prescribed it. Vivekananda originally, कि when you are just sit and see the movements, आपके अंदर जो भी movements आ रहे हैं, thought, feeling, etc., just watch them patiently. Watch. There will come a time when they will lose their energy, their momentum, and they will dwindle down और वो खत्म हो जाएंगे. But for that, as long as you need to watch, you need to watch. But just simply watch. That is the mental Purusha, the mental witness. Okay? This happens to everybody. Or it can be, I mean, ऐसे नहीं, but sometimes you can become confused कि am I thinking or am I thinking about what I am thinking? It can happen. It can be a stage. ठीक है? But pass through it. वो total separation होगा. You will be able to see your thoughts as totally separate from yourself. वो प्रकृति दिखेगी और मैं जो देखने वाला हूं पुरुष, हमारी कॉन्शियसनेस उसके साथ एटलीस्ट फॉर सम टाइम या मोमेंटरीली आइडेंटिफाई हो जाएगी.
There are, Anmol bhai, there are moments where you yourself can, if your thoughts are in wrong direction, I mean, this is in everybody's perception as well, I think, because when your thoughts are moving in wrong direction, you can simply take your mind out of that
Yes.
and put it somewhere else.
Yes.
So that is not mental purusha, that's just
That is also Purusha only. That is the controlling aspect of the Purusha.
acha, that is
द्रष्टानुमन्ता च भर्ता भोक्ता महेश्वरः परमात्मेति चाप्युक्तो देहे अस्मिन् पुरुषः परः. तो ये पुरुष के स्टेजेस हैं. सो वन इज उपद्रष्टा, सिंपली द विटनेस. अनुमंता च, देन इज द सैंक्शन गिवर. अभी तक आपके अंदर इतनी पावर नहीं थी कि आप उसको कंट्रोल कर सकें, बट देन विद डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द विटनेस थिंग, अनुमति देना कि अगर मेरी
अच्छा अच्छा
अनुमति नहीं है तो ये थॉट्स नहीं आएंगे.
हाँ, so you
That
can
is the
cancel your
real
thoughts,
self
right?
mastery. Sorry?
No, you can also cancel your thought. No,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
your thought,
Yeah.
so that is Anumanta level. Okay.
That is the Anumanta.
हाँ
मतलब वो सब साइमल्टेनियस है. आई मीन दैट वे. जो मैंने वर्ड्स बोला था, दैट इज 13.23. उपद्रष्टा माने विटनेस, अनुमंता माने सैंक्शन गिवर, भर्ता माने उसका सपोर्टर. तो इट इज द पुरुषा विच इज एक्चुअली सपोर्टिंग द मूवमेंट्स ऑफ द प्रकृति. भरता, सपोर्ट, उसका भरण पोषण करना. भरण, पोषण इज नरिशमेंट, भरण करना. ठीक है. ब्री, बियर, इंग्लिश का जो बियर है इट कम्स फ्रॉम द सेम रूट, ब्री संस्कृत का धातु है. उपद्रष्टा, अनुमंता च भरता, भोक्ता, उसका एंजॉयर. सो इट इज एंजॉइंग द मूवमेंट्स ऑफ द प्रकृति. एंड महेश्वर, ग्रेट लॉर्ड. दैट इज द फाइनल व्हेन यू हैव टोटल कंट्रोल ओवर द मूवमेंट्स ऑफ योर नेचर. So this is like, you could say, a gradations, how the Purusha consciousness develops. Okay. Usually, however, it is the mental Purusha one first becomes aware of, and through that, the nature is led to become aware of the psychic being, or the central Purusha is more difficult. Central Purusha से उनका मतलब है the central being. He is saying it very clearly कि पहले वो mental Purusha आता है to become aware of the psychic being, or the central Purusha is more difficult. It will require more sadhana, more effort, more time. Psychic being वो सबसे easy तरीका है शुद्ध अहेतुकी भक्ति. You love the divine simply because he is he and you are you, and you cannot help it. It is through this that the psychic being comes out the fastest. Then you don't love the divine, like a child loves his mother or father so that he can get what he wants from him. No. When you love the divine simply because he is he and you are you means you are his portion. Simply because he is he and you are you, and you cannot help it. You cannot help but loving the divine. That is when जब वो psychic being बाहर निकलना शुरू होता है. Through bhakti, as we have said earlier, the natural attitude of the psychic being is to identify itself as the child, the son of God, the bhakta. हमने पिछले सेशन में सेंटेंस किया था. We had highlighted this very much. कहाँ गया? किसी एक उसमें था. I'm trying to, एक उसमें था ना, ढूंढूंगा, इसमें आ जाएगा, नेचुरल एटीट्यूड करके. एनीवे, आई विल पेस्ट इट ऑन द ग्रुप लेटर ऑन. माय एम इज टू फिनिश दिस सेक्शन टुडे. बहुत टाइम से चल रहा है. वेयर इज इट? या ये लेटर थोड़ा बड़ा है, इसके बाद एक और है. What should we do? Leave it for next time? It's already 9:01.
Let's not rush through this
Let's
because of
not
the,
rush. Let's not rush.
there are
तो मैं एक
couple of
काम करता
very
हूँ. Let me search that letter first.
search for
because
Son of God. That will give you.
Natural attitude. ये रहा. So this was the sentence. The natural attitude of the psychic being is to feel itself as the child, the son of God, the bhakta. All the childlike qualities, what are they? Self-existent joy. बच्चे ऐसे ही खिखी करके हंस रहे होते हैं ना, विदाउट एनी रीजन. सो दैट सेल्फ एग्जिस्टेंट डिलाइट, आत्मरति जिसको बोलते हैं, द सन ऑफ गॉड, फीलिंग योर सेल्फ एज हिज पोर्शन, हिज अंश. यहाँ पे सन लिखा है, डजंट, कोई ऐसा जेंडर का वो नहीं है, सन डॉटर, इट्स सिंपली जस्ट फॉर सन ऑफ गॉड, द भक्ता. Bhakta is the one who loves the divine unconditionally, simply because the divine is the divine and I am I. That is the true definition of bhakti. एक शिवानंदो का बहुत ब्यूटीफुल सेंटेंस है जो चाइल्ड वर्ड को लिखे, व्हाट इज गॉड आफ्टर ऑल? एन इटर्नल चाइल्ड प्लेइंग एन इटर्नल गेम इन एन इटर्नल गार्डन। Shri Krishna ka jo image hai na of the eternal child. Mother clarifies that also, that why is he depicted as a child? She says because he is continuously progressing. The play of yesterday will not be the play of tomorrow. The play of tomorrow will be better than the play of yesterday. It's a progressive Leela. The game is improving, the play is improving, and he is in constant progress. That is why he is depicted as a child. I will, I mean, I locate where the mother has said this and paste that. It's a very important quotation. Right? 9:03. We had started at around 8:03. So shall we just be silent for some time and close? Uh, hmm. Should I stop sharing the screen?